The 1985 National Football League Collegiate Player Draft is on the air.
ESPN was broadcasting the draft for the 6th year, and players were using any leverage they had to go where they wanted.
At a time when Bernie Kosar is stage managing which team he played for, you're going to have more players who are going to announce a preference.
Pittsburgh's Bill Fralic was college's top offensive lineman. He was so dominant, he inspired the creation of a new statistic, the pancake block. After losing out on Kosar, Minnesota and GM Mike Lynn honed in on Fralic with the 2nd overall pick. But like Kosar, Fralic had no intent of playing for the Pennywise Vikings.
Mike Lynn notoriously would just sit on guys. There was no other place to go. There was no free agency, and just pay them the lowest amount of money.
They were notoriously cheap.
It was a sentence, not a selection.
I personally wanted to go to Atlanta just because it was warm. I grew up in Pittsburgh, and I was used to being cold. I wanted to figure out what warm weather was like.
We got into a situation there with Lynn where he was going to take Fralic for sure, and we had to get him to back off. I called him straight up and said, "You're just making a mistake. I don't know what you've heard about me, but let me tell you straight up, I'll fight you all the way on this thing. He won't come here." You ever watch wrestling, WrestleMania? We're in the 2nd year of it. Bill Fralic loves that stuff.
We had a guy in Pittsburgh named Bruno Sammartino, who was a WWF legend, just by having the connection there and, helped us.
It was an option, albeit not a good one, an option.
Frazzled by Fralic's wrestling bluff, Minnesota committed a draft day blunder. It left the normally cool commissioner with his head spinning.
Come on, Pete, the time's run out.
All right, Minnesota temporarily passes.
Oh,
The 3rd choice is Houston, obtained from a trade with Minnesota. So Houston is now up.
they could buy time here because they know who Houston wants, so they're getting extra time to work on either Dallas or
Now they're up.
Francisco,
Now
Atlanta.
Minnesota's up next after Houston.
Right, if they make their selection, yes.
All right, on the 2nd pick, Minnesota, through Houston, trades.
I knew it.
Its #1 choice, the Atlanta Falcons, and Atlanta gives up their 1st in this draft and their 3rd in this draft. Falcons give their 1st and 3rd in this draft for the Minnesota choice, the 2nd pick acquired from Houston. And Atlanta selects Bill Fralic, tackle, Pittsburgh. Houston is now up. Houston Oilers. Houston now picks. Houston picks on the 3rd choice of the 1st round, Ray Childress, defensive lineman from Texas A&M.
Right.
Next up, 4th selection in the 1st round. Next up, Atlanta. However, they've just traded that pick to Minnesota. So it's the Minnesota choice through the trade with Atlanta coming up next.
The Vikings certainly didn't end up on the short end of the stick by me and Ralph telling them to leave me the hell alone. They ended up with Chris Dolman, my teammate in college. We had a miserable senior year, so, to have 2 guys drafted in the top 4 picks for a 3-7-1 team is probably a little bit surprising.
Yeah, he's a projection, too. He's a down lineman that's projecting to linebacker, and there used to be a rule of thumb. When you're drafting this high, you take sure things, not projections.
This shocks everybody. I think even you could hear the crowd in here, George, just went, oh, wait a minute.
Minnesota got the last laugh. After getting rejected by Kosar and Fralic, their 3rd choice ended up enjoying a Hall of Fame career in the color purple.
Tough work.
The result was good for Fralic, too. He avoided the Vikings because of their frugality. It was a scheme that rewards him to this day.
The top pick above him, Bruce Smith, got $2.8 million total. That's what the deals were in 1985. Fralic got $7.76 million. It was a landmark contract. Bill Fralic gets $150,000 a year for the rest of his life. He's been getting it for the last 20 years.
And probably my dad cooked up that concept, which was a good one to keep me from spending all that money as a young, dumb 22-year-old.
It was called the Rabbi Trust. No one's ever done one before, no one's done one after. We were all living pretty good.
As for the WWF, Fralic did enter pro wrestling in 1986 when he took part in a 20-man battle royale in WrestleMania 2. He was eliminated by Big John Studd.